Good afternoon, all the resource persons and dear students. So we are starting the half a day workshop now. So as a part of that, the first I'll give a brief introduction regarding the ICMR. So just I'll share my screen and we'll start. I hope my screen is visible to you all. Greetings from Grants Committee, KMC SRF and Research Cell Kasturba Medical College Manipal. I welcome you all for this half a day workshop to prepare students for ICMR STS 2021. As a part of that, I give just a brief introduction to students about the ICMR STS. What is it and what are the procedure to apply for that, and what is the timeline which they give in a year. That all I'll tell in a briefly in 5-6 minutes. So Indian Council of Medical Research started this short-term studentship. STS means short-term studentship in 1979. That was started in order to promote interest and aptitude for research among medical undergraduates. Okay, the main objective of this short-term studentship was to provide an opportunity to undergraduate medical students to familiarize themselves with research methodology and techniques by being associated for a short duration with their seniors or ongoing research programs or by undertaking independent projects. They have not specified that it has to be only the independent project. Either you can associate it with your seniors, those who are already started a project, okay, or any research project which is being undertaken in particular department and you are interested and a primary investigator allows you to join, you can join. Any of these things are allowed, but it is just to provide an opportunity for students to be familiarized with the research methodology and techniques. This may serve as an incentive for them to take up research as a career in future, right? During our undergraduate time, we were not knowing anything about the research. The same thing should not be continued. So that's why the ICMR has started that at least the students should know about research. What is it, how it should be conducted and all, so that they can choose their career in future in research. And it's open for both MBBS as well as BDS students. And when you look at the number of STS awards which they give, totally every year 1500 students will be awarded this STS, ICMR STS, and out of that 1500, around 80% means 1200 awards will be given to the MBBS students. Means you have more opportunity, and the value of this studentship is 10,000 per month for 2 months duration. Means total 20,000 would be awarded to you, and that is meant to be a stipend for the students. Okay, it is just a stipend for the students. You remember that you may be getting this 20,000 for 2 months. What is the procedure? How we should apply, when we should apply, how one can approach this ICMR STS and all. The first thing we need to know about it is it's a fully online program. Okay, so no hard copies have to be submitted anywhere, just the online program. Usually the student is required to register on ICMR website in the month of mid-December. Look at that, when it starts, the cycle starts in the month of December. Usually every year in the mid-December they announce it about the ICMR of that particular year. Usually around 15th-16th of December it starts, and the student should submit the application form. Once they register, they will be in a position to download that application form. And along with that application form, a proposal. You need to write a proposal that you are going to learn how to prepare a proposal today. Online by January means 1 month time will be given to you to prepare your proposal. At the time of registration, you need not even mention about the topic also. Just you have to register from which college you are from and your details. That's it. Once it is done, then application form and a proposal has to be uploaded to the ICMR website by January last week, usually around 25th to 27, 28. That time you need to upload with the proposal, and results will be announced in the month of April. They take some 2 months or 3 months for scrutinizing your proposals, and the results will be announced, and the list of selected students will be displayed on the website. Once it is done, the student is expected to complete the project in any 2 given months between April to September. Means once the results are out, since then your work starts. So between any 2 months, April to September, you need to complete your project and submit the report before the last date of submission. This they will notify. In fact, this year, because of COVID, they have announced from October 1st the report should be submitted to the ICMR. The student will be awarded stipend and a certificate only after submission of their report, if it is approved. After submission, if it is approved, then only you will be awarded stipend and certificate. Please keep this in mind, because many students are under the impression that once they are selected for uploading their after uploading their proposal, they are just getting the stipend. No, your final report has to be approved by the committee, then only you get a stipend and certificate. That's why once your proposal is accepted, you have a more responsibility to complete it in a perfect manner. That is very, very important. Okay, the students who are unable to complete, sometimes this year you are unable to complete by any reason, you can reapply for the next STS program with the same project. But don't think that you have already been accepted by them. No, it will be considered as a fresh or new application. And this is the timeline of STS. Means starts from the December, continues, and 1.5 years, after 1.5 years, almost in the month of August to October, they dispatch your certificates, and the stipend will be given after 1.5 years, that is from April to May to July. That during that period they release your stipend. Okay, this is how you need to prepare a proposal. Okay, it contains the reference ID that once you register, it will be automatically generated. Title, introduction, objectives, methodology, implications, and references. This is what your proposal should contain. Okay, approximately the words are mentioned there, but that word limit is only a guide and is flexible as per requirements. Okay, if you require more words for introduction, fine, it is accepted. If you require less words, it is fine. Okay, but this is what it should contain. Approximately it guides you how much words should be there for your different titles. And for writing research proposal, please follow that Times New Roman with a font size of 12 and spacing 1.5. This is what is the standard for ICMR STS proposal submission. And to guide you regarding these all titles, subheadings, and all, today we have the eminent speakers with us. The first talk would be framing the research question. For any research, this is the backbone. You can say that unless the good research question, you cannot move forward. So that's why to speak and to guide you on how to frame the research question, we have Dr. Vivek Pandey, the Sir, Associate Professor, Department of Orthopedics, Kasturba Medical College, Manipal. He has a very vast experience in research, and Sir will deliver you about how to frame the research question. Followed by Sir's talk, how to write a protocol. Protocol includes all these things: introduction, material, methods, and all. How to write that protocol to be suitable for submission to ICMR. That will be taken by Mrs. Seema Shetty. She is also a faculty in the Department of Microbiology, KMC Manipal. She will guide you through how to write a protocol. Followed by that, the materials and methodology. Okay, this is also very important for any research. There should be a proper methodology. Then only it is considered a good research. So how we should construct our methodology and what should be used in research as a materials will be taken by Dr. Chandni Palimer. She is also additional professor, Department of Anatomy. She will take you through this session, and followed by that, the last one, the literature search. Of course, once you have a research question in your mind, particular to that research question, you need to search literature, the appropriate literature you need to search, and you should have a knowledge about that. So how to do that literature search, what points we need to keep in mind while searching, and all these things will be taken by Dr. Arvind N. Prabhu, the associate professor in the Department of Neurology, KMC Manipal. Sir will take you through that. So with this brief introduction regarding ICMR and the speakers, I'll finish my talk. Thank you very much. Okay. Over to Seema.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for that information. Next, we'll have a talk by Dr. Vivek Pandey. He's an associate professor in the Department of Orthopedics, KMC Manipal. So, sir will be talking on framing the research question. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Seema.
Yes, sir.
It's there.
Oops. Okay. So is my screen visible, Seema?
Yes, sir. It's visible.
Okay. Thank you, Seema, for the invitation, and thank you, Shankar. You have been doing a remarkable work regarding this STS program for many years.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Now, I think this is the most important thing regarding any research, whether it is the STS research or is the the highest possible research. Formulating a research question, that what are we actually looking for? Now, why write a research question? Like, why do we need a research question? Because a focused question, it provides the structure to the search of the information. A well-crafted research question helps to avoid aimless searching and wasted time. Now, let me put it in a different way. Sometimes we have the esteemed and very focused researchers who know exactly what are they looking for. But here we are guiding the young budding students who are interested into research. Practically, sometimes what happens, we get these students who would come to our department or they'll go to some other department and they'll say, sir, I want to do some research. What research? Sir, something, sir. No, something you must be having in your mind. Sir, something in osteoarthritis. What in osteoarthritis? Sir, I don't know. So that is what is the fault. When you are planning to do a research, yes, you can always come and ask that I want to do a research, but I don't have an idea in my mind that what am I looking for? Because idea also comes only with you when you have a background. One, or have you observed anything? Observe means, let's say you watched that at your home, your grandmother who has got osteoarthritis was suffering from many months and years, and when she was given a X medication, she improved. So the question can come to your mind that, is this medication really useful? Then you did a little bit of literature search, but you found that the literature is confusing, it is conflicting. So that is a research question. So first, whenever you want to do a research in any subject, you want to visit a department, you need to have some idea in your mind that what are you looking for? What is your research question? And to have the good question, how does it help us? It helps us in accurately identifying the problem. Once you have accurately identified the problem, you can have an accurate hypothesis that whether this will work or this will not work. And then only the logical methodology and accurate data collection can follow. But the first and foremost important thing is you have to identify the problem. If your research question is wrongly framed or not framed in an appropriate fashion, After that, everything starts faltering. Only at the end of your research, somewhere you realize that the question what I asked was completely wrong. So let's see how do we follow this and how a good research question is going to help you. So when you follow you frame a research question, then only you can design an appropriate method and somebody is going to speak about it. If you have the appropriate methodology, then only you can have the results and you can have a appropriate analysis. If something goes wrong in between, especially at the research question level itself or methodology, you will have an epic fail. If you really want a right result to happen, or I would not say the right result, the question what you're asking to be answered in an appropriate fashion, then everything has to go in the right order. It's not only the research question, but in fact your methodology, the way you have collected the data, the way you have analyzed and presented, everything should be done in a perfect fashion. I'll give you a small simple example that how the research question actually comes to the mind. So as Dr. Shankar introduced me, I'm in orthopedics and my main work revolves around the knee and shoulder. The picture on the screen, what you see is of a rotator cuff. This is the rotator cuff. If you are an MBBS or in the medical side, you know this is one of the group of tendons which are attached onto the top of humerus and are responsible for moving the shoulder. So about 5 years back when I was writing a review article, I read about this rotator cuff that when we keep the shoulder in abduction, means you move it a bit away from the body, it improves the circulation. It immediately changes the circulation to higher mode. Means when it is in adducted, the circulation is less, but when it is in the abducted position, the circulation is better. It came to my mind and just, I was busy with some of my other work and it went off. Over a few years, we were using this brace for some other purpose. And one day it flashed to my mind, see this brace, which is given for many shoulder surgeries and sometimes also after the rotator cuff repair, is keeping the shoulder is some amount of abduction. So if you see there's about 15 to 20 degrees of abduction. So there was a study which was done in 1970s by Rathbun. And Rathbun said that when you bring the shoulder more than 30 to 40 degrees, the vascularity in this tendon, which is also known as supraspinatus, changes. It becomes much better. So we thought that if the vascularity improves, will it also change the healing pattern? Will it, if the vascularity is better, your all the pain producing substances can be washed off earlier and easier? And is it going to really make the patient's life better in the terms of comfort, discomfort, lesser pain and better healing? So you see the question was framed that is if you provide an abduction brace. So this was our research question which just got published about few days back. Does application of abduction brace after arthroscopic rotator cuff repair improve the blood flow around the posterior superior rotator cuff, which is actually the supra and infraspinatus, and repair site, affecting the pain levels and clinical and structural outcome? And then we thought we'll randomize it. So this is what is the importance of a research question. You need to have an idea that what are you looking for? Unless and until that is framed in the perfect fashion, you cannot proceed with your rest of the journey, because rest of the thing completely depends upon what is your question. And we also keep on telling that whenever you are asking something in a research, always must ask that what are you looking for? What is your question? So a good question will always detail the problem statement. It will describe and refine the issue. It will add the focus to the problem statement. It will also help in guiding the data collection and analysis, and it will set the context of research. In an overall, the research question, a perfectly defined research question. So if we go back to this, does application of abduction brace after the arthroscopic rotator cuff repair improve the blood flow? So that is my question. Does it improve the blood flow? And if the blood flow is improved, that what am I looking for? Okay, fine. Blood flow is improved. Then what? So is it improving my healing the patient's healing rate? Is it improving his pain? Is my clinical and structural outcome better? And then how do I actually assess it? What kind of study should I apply? So we thought, okay, in some patients we will give a brace, in some patients we will not give. Now it cannot be my whims and fancy in whom I give and whom I not. So we decided to do the randomized control trial. So when you frame a research question, there are certain aspects of it, and there's an acronym for that, which is known as FINER. Some people also call it FINER maps, but I have minimized it for the ease. These are the various components of a research question. What is F? F means the question, what you have asked. Is it feasible? Is it possible to do? Or is it completely impossible in your circumstances, in your scenario, the way you are placed, the way you are, the facilities and other things? Is it not possible? So it may be feasible, it may not be feasible. Is it an interesting question? Is it going to do something good for the research, the academia, or is it going to change something? Or is it just a one boring question which has been answered many times? Is it something novel? Is it ethical to do research? Or you are going to harm the participants? And is it relevant in today's scenario or in yesteryears or maybe tomorrow? Is it going to be relevant, or it is one dumb question to be answered? So what is the meaning of feasibility? Feasibility in terms of participant. So let's say you design a research question, but then you realize that the number of patients who join the who come to the hospital or in the community are not really much. So at the end of 1 year or 2 years, when you want to finish your study, and that's the time frame you have decided, you will not have the enough sample size. So even though your question is good, but you won't have an enough sample size. So I'll give an example. About 3 years back, we decided to give a thesis to a postgraduate, and the research question was outcome of clinical and radiological outcome of a isolated posterior cruciate ligament reconstruction, and we wanted to follow for minimum of 5 years for some reason. So when the topic was being discussed, the first thing I said, in a year we operate probably 5 to 10 PCLs, because PCL is not very common injury, even though it is a relatively okay, but the number of surgeries done for the PCL are not so frequent. So if I see that how many PCLs we would have done in the last few years, will be probably not more than 40, 30 to 40, 50, okay, 50. But then we don't have the data for all the patients. We may not have the phone number. Some of the addresses are incorrect. Some patients would not come. So eventually we will end up with something like a data of 15 to 20. Now 15 to 20 data will not be sufficient to give me a categorical outcome, even if I, let's say, conclude, and then some patients may have a different methodology. We would have used a different graft. Some patients will be in different age groups. So overall, I'm going to get a khichdi or a very incoherent outcome. So we decided to drop that. Not that the question was wrong. The question was fantastic. Maybe now today we are ready, because we are 5 years ahead and now we have got data, and we also know that couple of patients we have followed up. So we will probably able to match about 40 of them, if not 60 to 70. So you must see that whether you can do it or not. Manpower, wherewithal, do you have all the gadgets? Do you have the time? Do you have the funds? Let's say you want to do a longitudinal study, a prospective study. Prospective study means, let's say I want to see okay, I'll give an example of rotator cuff. The same rotator cuff, when somebody is in late 40s or maybe early 50s, the same rotator cuff starts undergoing some changes and it develops a small tear. We call it as a partial tear. Now the whole world is debating whether these partial tears do really become a complete tear in due course of time or not, or they remain like that. So what will influence a partial tear become a full thickness tear? We are still not very clear. But then if I have to do this study, I need to follow these patients for about 5 to 10 years. So let's say I start collecting the data, and at the end of 2 years, 1 year, I have, let's say, 100 patients who have partial tear. Now, will I be able to follow them for 10 years? That's my time frame. who will be looking for these patients, who will be following them? Do we have this much of funds? So if I'm calling these patients, who is going to disperse the money to them, because you have to give sometimes the travel charges. So all that you can also club into saying that resources. Do I have a resource wherewithal, manpower, gadget, time frame, funds to conduct the study? So one of the important thing you must always see, is it feasible to do the study or not? Second thing is interesting. The question what you have asked, is it really interesting? Interesting in the sense, does it incite enough amount of academic debate? The study which I have just shown you, which we published recently, there is hardly any work done. In fact, I would say that this is the first clinical study, done in last 40-50 years to prove that in fact, our outcome was, even though the blood flow does change, but it does not change the clinical outcome. But our sample size was not much. That's the reason we included that in title as a pilot. So now I've opened this question for the academia to do much larger study, maybe, much more patients and participants in the either group to have a categorical answer. You know why? Because a lot of companies promote this abduction brace. The brace what you saw was an abduction brace. The commercially available abduction brace costs about 8 to 10,000 rupees. Okay, whereas if you give a simple arm pouch, it is something like 500 rupees. So you see that there's a 10 to 15 times cost difference. So people will be really interested to know if this brace, if our answer would have been that yes, abduction brace is a fantastic and it increases the blood flow and it changes the clinical outcome as well as the structural outcome, then it would have been a different scenario. So when you ask a question, you should always be sure that is it going to make some difference, whether there is a clinical difference, academic difference, or the community difference. Am I going to bring out something novel information through that? So that comes to the next, novel. Is it something new what you're talking about, or is it repetitive? It has been answered for last 20 years, or you have just copied from somewhere and you want to redo. Now these two are important, repetitive and copied. Remember one thing, that often in the research scenario, if one research is published, suddenly you'll find for next 5 years or 3 years, similar research will be done. And not every research which is done is of a quality. So there is a likelihood that people are just mimicking something. There is always a gap. You can always fill in that gap. So even though the research sounds repetitive, but if you elevate the quality of study or the level of study, so you can come up with a much more better information. So not that the repetitive question or a just copied question is bad question, but the question is, how are you going to answer this? Are you going to answer in the same way? Let's say somebody did a retrospective analysis, which is of much lower, in the evidence, and you decide. So most of the studies on a particular topic are, let's say, in retrospect. But you decide that I am going to do in this a randomized trial, which becomes one of the highest possible evidence. So even though it is a repetitive question, still there's a likelihood that it can be answered in a more informative and a evidence-based fashion. Another important thing is ethical, because every question what you ask and every proposal, finally what you submit, it has to go through the institutional ethical committee. And one of the key questions what ethics committee want to ask you, that when you conduct this research, is it going to harm the participants in any fashion? Is there any damage can happen? Okay, fine. When you do this, when you're going to collect this data, who's going to be guardian of this data? How are you going to ensure the confidentiality of the data? The whole world is now talking about the data, and I fondly say data is data. And it's like data is a god now. So data is extremely important. How are you going to save this data that this data is never exposed? Have you given the right to withdraw all the participants? Like participant can withdraw from your study if anything goes right, or if anything goes wrong, or even for the travel, like patient is coming back to you for follow-up every time, which is out of the routine clinical protocol. Are you going to compensate him? If something goes wrong, are you going to compensate him now? So like that, there are many ethical questions. So the question what you have asked, is it going to fulfill some of the important ethical requirements or not? So from the feasibility to the novelty to something inciting, and then finally, is it ethical or not? But the last one is it a relevant question? What kind of question are you asking? Is it filling a gap in the knowledge or not? Is it analyzing some kind of an academic assumptions or a professional practice? Is it helping in monitoring a development in the practice? So let's say I all of you know that this COVID has been, a biggest trouble for the mankind in the last few months. And a lot of still we have not yet understood this disease, its pathology completely, its pathomechanics, its clinical features, its management especially. A lot of lives have been lost because the management protocols are yet evolving. So let's say about few weeks back or few months back, people were advocating to give the antivirals only in a bad case. But what is emerging now in the last few months, last few weeks is the antivirals and especially the steroids can be started a bit earlier. Okay, and that has really improved the rates of morbidity and mortality. So how it happens? Because one practice is being done and now you want to change that practice. So that's what is the question of monitoring a development in practice. Then you want to compare a different approach. So let's say in surgery, you want to fix a bone from the front or from the back. Now, when you do it from the front, there are more muscles to come, but when you do from the back, there is a radial nerve to come. So can you compare these two and see which are going to give you the better clinical or the radiological outcome? You can test the theory. So that way, the question what you have asked, it should be relevant. And last but not the least, what potential your question has got. Okay, the question is answered, but is it going to make a difference? So let's say the question which we asked, my answer says very clearly that if you give an abduction brace or a simple arm pouch, there is no difference. So it means rather than prescribing a 8,000 worth rupee of a brace, I can give him a 500 rupee worth of a pouch and my outcomes are similar. There is no difference. So that way you must always try to figure out what is the impact of your research. If we are talking about the medicine in the clinical and the community practice or in a policy making. Let's say policy making. So let's say after 6 months, it is proven beyond doubt that remdesivir has no role. I'm just saying, let's say it is proven beyond doubt only steroids are useful, remdesivir is of no use. Now that is a huge thing because remdesivir is a very costly drug. If it is proven that it's only the steroid which is working, then why use such a costly drug? And that will save billions and billions of dollars of the governments across the globe. So that's how when you do a research, try to think, is it just a copy of something or am I going to answer something different? Something which can help a clinician or probably the pre or paraclinical side or whatever. So once we have a question in our mind, how do we actually move on to making a better question? So you need to have a topic in your mind. So let's say we had this rotator cuff and vascularity that was in our mind. The first thing is always you have to work a lot. Last talk of the day, I think, is about the literature review. So once you have a question, you have to read a lot for weeks and months together. You have to read, you have to brainstorm with your colleagues to figure out what is the most relevant problem associated with this question. Then you have to find out the gap. What is the gap? So we found out, okay, the vascularity does improve, but the question is there has never been a study on that. It's only a cadaveric study which Rathbun did in 1970s. Never a clinical study has proven. And even if it is proven, fine. If it changes, is it really going to make my clinical decision different? So that's the gap and the problem. Once you do all that, you formulate a question. There are many things. I would not, because you people are mostly undergrads and just the beginning of your research, I'll not make it very complicated, but there are many more questions you need to ask. And this is usually done with the help of the seniors with whom you'll be doing the research. That is on whom you are doing the research. That is, what is the group, who's the gender, age, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, and why are you doing this? So that was the relevance and the novelty. When are you doing this? Is it a current issue or is it related to a specific time period? Where are you going to do this research? Is it a community based or is it a hospital based? So many things comes in between. But in general, the path to research question is a question from the broad subject. Then you do the literature review and try to find out the gaps. With the gap, you narrow the gap, get some implied questions, and then you have a final question that this is what I want to do the research. On that, you apply the finer, and there's something known as a PICO. What is PICO? I'll come to that. There are many types of question. It could be depending upon existence of disease or a description and classification, composition of a drug, relations. It could be descriptive study, or it could be a causality relationship. I'll skip this part. What is a PICO? So PICO is a component of a research question on what patient finally, let's say the rotator cuff. So once we decided that yes, the abduction can change in rotator cuff. So who's my patient population? Now, rotator cuff tears are more common in older population. It is not so common in younger population. Intervention or issue. So what we wanted to intervention was to give abduction rays or not give abduction rays. But I needed a comparison. If I don't give a brace, then how would I know that this is changing or not changing? And changes the vascularity, but the question is, does it really changes the clinical or the structural, that is the sonographic healing outcome or not? So this PICO is how we decide finally how are we going to do the research. But there are some problems when you frame a question. The question can be very broad, and a very broad question can be very difficult to conduct because then you'll have many more variables and more variables. It's very difficult to to narrow down. There'll be a lot of confounding factors coming in. So it is better to have a narrow question, a very focused and a precise question. Let's say it's like this: incidence of elevated glyco-HB in patients who have got shoulder pain. That's it. Okay, so that is a very, or if you say diabetes in frozen shoulder. Now, diabetes in a frozen shoulder is a very broad question, but once you focus your question, incidence of GLI-HB, like GLI-HB, is it normal, is it pre-diabetic or the frank diabetes in a frozen shoulder? That's a very specific question. Not enough. You feel sometimes that this question is not enough. It will exclude a lot of things. So you need to have expand the inclusion criteria. You need to have the skills to conduct that research. So when you are a student, most of the time you'll be working with a team. But as you grow up, you also realize that this is one thing I can do the research, but I don't have a skill. So I may have certain questions in my mind regarding the shoulders or the knees, which we do very frequently, but I may not be skilled enough today to conduct that research. So I'll say, okay, 5 years down the line, we'll have more patients and more experience. I'll do that. Expense, not very interesting or not very relevant. You put in so much of your hard work into a question, you come up with some kind of an answer after 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 years, and then people realize that it's not interesting. It has been answered n number of times and you got the same result. So nobody's going to look at your question. Last, what is the difference between a research question and a hypothesis? So research question is the research which you intend to address. And hypothesis is a proposition that your research intends to prove or disprove. So let's say I would say a borderline GLI-HB, which is between, let's say, 5.7 to 6.4, can also predispose a patient for the frozen shoulder. Frozen shoulder is very closely related to the diabetes. Now, hypothesis is elevated GLI-HB will not make any difference, or pre-diabetic GLI-HB will not cause any frozen shoulder. So that is my hypothesis, because that's how it goes. Whether I want to take a null hypothesis means whether it is elevated or not, it's not going to make any difference. So in summary, whenever at your stage, when you are planning to start the research, even at my stage, sometimes it has happened. Remember, when you want to answer a question, ask a question, read as much as possible. There is always immense scope in every single aspect, because the science is ever changing. It is never a constant phenomena. Keep a tab on trends, so you know what's going on now. Okay, remdesivir has come, favipiravir has come, steroids have come, this has come, that has gone. So keep a tab on the trends. Get inputs from others. So if you talk to some 20 people, they'll tell you, no, it doesn't work. Oh, this one works. Use Spiner and Pico once you have finalized your question, and create aims and objectives. That this is what is my aim when I'm doing this. This is how I'm going to conduct this. And then test your question using the hypothesis. So lastly, knowledge is having the right answer, but intelligence is asking the right question. Thank you so much.